Hi friends, I wanted to come here and wish you a very happy new year. I hope that this next year will be a really wonderful and exciting year for you. And I also have another reason for coming here today. I've been thinking about something a bit lately and I wanted to share my thoughts on it with you. It may surprise you to know that I am a slow learner. I've always been a slow learner. I was never a very good student at school. I always had trouble. I was always a little bit behind the others who seemed to know exactly what they were doing. And I remember the frustration, especially in something like sewing class, when I wanted to do really, really well and make beautiful things. And a few of the other girls especially would be racing ahead, making these wonderful fitted blazers, and I was struggling with a basic pair of shorts. So no, learning has never come easily to me, and that certainly did not change when I began to learn how to weave. There are quite a few things though that have helped me over the years to become a better learner. One of the first things was, and I think that I came to this through homeschooling my own children, is to develop a love of learning. I think when you're at school, a lot of us, our experience is that it's just a trial to get through. It's not something that's enjoyable. We enjoy our lives much more out of school than we do in school. And so I don't really feel like I'd experienced a real love of learning until I started teaching my own kids. Teaching someone to read is like an amazing thing. Having the light go on in their eyes, having it click for them, all of a sudden they can read, their whole world opens up, and you as the teacher get to share in that experience. And so once I found that I did actually love to learn, then I wanted to learn lots of things. Sirens. Again. So when I started to learn to weave, it was no different really. It was still a very long and difficult process and a very slow process. There were times, many times, when I wanted to give up on weaving completely because I'd somehow decided in my mind that I wasn't actually capable of learning what I needed to know. And yet here I am all these years later now teaching others to weave. I remember also going to a crochet class one time as an adult, and I wanted to learn how to crochet and I hadn't been able to crochet on my own before. And I was in a class with a number of ladies and they all just seemed to take off with it. They had no problems understanding what the teacher was telling them, understanding the charts, and sort of just intuitively knowing what they had to do next with it. And the task for the class was to crochet a granny square. Well, by the end of the class, I did have a granny square. It was crooked and misshapen, and the teacher helped me to do most of it. I was the one who straggled behind, and to this day I still can only do very basic crochet. But the thing is that class was an hour long, and I think this is one of the keys to learning something successfully. Number one, learning can't be hurried, and number two, you can't put a restriction on the time that it's going to take for you to learn something, because then if you don't learn it within that amount of time, you think that you are not capable of actually learning it. So here's something that I realized after a little while, well, let's say many, many years, because I've been doing learning all sorts of things for a lot of years now. Something I realized was I would read something, if I was learning it from a book, I would need to read it between 5 and 10 times, maybe even more over a course of however long, to sometimes grasp a new concept. Now that seems like a lot of times, doesn't it? And so it requires a lot of patience. But if it takes that long, does it really matter that it took that long if at the end you can grasp the concept and you've grasped it in your own time and in your own way? As I was reflecting on this recently, it reminded me of a business course that I did, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And I remember that the marketing section of the business course, by the way, I detest marketing, but for some reason this stuck with me. It said, it talked about the rule of 7. Now, if you've had anything to do with marketing, you might be familiar with the rule of 7, but basically it suggests that the human brain or the human person needs to see something or be exposed to something 7 times in order to become familiar enough with it to be comfortable with it. Now, I certainly don't apply any of these sort of psychological marketing strategies to my own business, mostly because I'm not really interested at all. But I did sort of reflect on that when I was thinking about my reading something 5 to 10 times in order to be able to grasp the concept. I've actually got a real life example of this. I've spent probably the last week trying to plan a new project, and it was based around a weft-faced weave idea. If you don't know what weft-faced is, it's basically a weave where the weft is compacted down so that the warp doesn't show. A tapestry is a perfect example of this. So I wanted to do something like that. And I was looking at this marvelous book for inspiration. I don't know if you've seen this book before. It's a really, really great book. I'll leave a link to it down below, but I'll just say one thing about it. If you're a beginner weaver, don't go for this kind of book just yet, because it is quite detailed and advanced, and it may just confuse you. You can always buy it and put it in your weaving library for later on when you know a little bit more, but for now it's really not beginner material. Anyway, I've been looking through this book for inspiration. There are lots and lots of beautiful weft face weaves in this book. I'll just read out the title. It's Weft Face Pattern Weaves by Nancy Arthur Hoskins. So yeah, I've been going through this book, and I wanted to try to do a 6-shaft weft faced weave on a rose path threading. And I was looking at the charts, the pictorial charts, because I wanted to do some really pictorial kind of little houses and maybe some little people and stuff like that. And then maybe have it as a really pretty little wall hanging. And I mainly just wanted to do it to experiment as well, because I hadn't done a weft face weave on 6 shafts before, so I thought it would be a fun thing to do. But I got really stuck on the pictorial graphs. I couldn't figure out, based on what I already knew of weft face weaves, how I was going to use the color combinations and how I would design my own pictures and that sort of thing. And it's been going around and around and around in my brain. And yes, I've spent about a week on this. And so I've come back to the section on 6 shafts, and I don't know, I haven't counted how many times I've read over it, but I just kept coming back to it. I'd have a break. I'd say, okay, enough reading for today. I'm going to leave it for tomorrow because I still don't get it. And then I would come back to it tomorrow, read it again. I still don't get it. Something is missing. I'm not making a connection somehow. I also did a little bit of extra research just by Googling the search terms that I was looking for. That helped a little bit. And then finally, I don't know, yesterday, I came back and I read the same section again, and I looked over the graphs again, and I went, oh, actually, that is really simple. I just wasn't thinking about the symmetry of the weaving, and that was the sticking point for me, that somehow I had not envisioned the symmetry, weaving one side, weaving the other side exactly the same. And that was the sticking point for me, and I got it. And so today I'm going to warp up my loom, and I'm going to experiment with some pictures. I'm going to design some myself, and I'm going to experiment with different yarns. And I'm at that happy point where I can say, yes, I get it, let's go, this is going to be fun. But before then, oh, uncertainty, what's wrong with me? I can't learn this, I don't know what's wrong, you know. But that's happened to me so many times over the years now, that at first, when I first started weaving and I was on my own completely with it, I was teaching myself from books, I often had some really despairing moments where I was like, I'm too stupid to get this. And I think a lot of people have the same experience. But I think once you have these certain keys to learning and then the perseverance to keep coming back to it until you get it, or the finding of the right explanation, the right person, the right article, whatever it is, to explain it to you in a way where you can go, oh, is that it? That's what I have to do. So the reason that I'm actually here rambling about all of this is that I wanted to encourage you. I have the privilege of teaching so many beginner weavers now, and I understand the frustration of not knowing how to push through and get to the next step. But I want to encourage you and reiterate that nobody is too stupid to learn this, and that it's only you telling yourself that gets in the way. Okay, so a few steps to successful learning. Slow it down. Slow it down completely. This is actually really hard to do. We want to learn things quickly. We've seen beautiful weaving everywhere. There's beautiful weaving. Go on Instagram, go on Facebook, go on YouTube. There are people who are ahead of you, and you want to be where they are. But that doesn't happen overnight. So accept that the whole process of weaving is a slow process, and learning is part of that process as well. If you can slow it down, you will enjoy the learning, you'll enjoy the research. And for some projects, you may need to spend as much, if not more time, researching and learning the techniques and the process as you do actually weaving the finished piece. And that's absolutely fine. Remember that with each piece of knowledge gained, it's like a stepping stone. You just keep stepping up and up and up and building on what you started with. I want you to remember as well that no one is watching you. Who's there judging you except for yourself? If you're not understanding something, give yourself more time. We're always our own worst judges. So be kind to yourself, be patient with yourself, and it will pay off. Another thing I want you to do, and this is really, really hard, is to let go of your attachment to time. By that, I mean that feeling that you should be somewhere else, that you should be doing something else, that you're being overindulgent by spending time investing in yourself and learning new things. The time that we have in our lives is a gift, and part of being grateful for that is using it wisely. So know that learning new things is using your time wisely. You're investing in yourself, your own knowledge, and that's very worthy of your time. So try to allocate chunks of time. Try to actually schedule the time that you need, or a certain amount of time, to learning new things, just as you would schedule a meeting or going to work or whatever else it is that you're doing. Try to be generous to yourself by being generous with your time to yourself, if that makes sense. And the last thing that I want to say is just start with one thing. Weaving is very exciting, I know that, and you feel like you want to know all the things all at once, but you can't. You need to just start with one thing, and if you're an absolute beginner weaver, then the first thing is the absolute basics. Rather than trying to look at the entirety of what you need to know, just look at the parts of where you can start. I hope this video and sharing my thoughts has been helpful to you, and I hope that this year brings lots of beautiful weaving time. If you are a beginner, I'll leave some links to some helpful resources for you down below. And I always love to hear from you, whether it's a question or a comment. Liking and subscribing is also very welcome. Thank you for watching, and until next time, happy weaving!